Welcome to Reddit Reads r/ProRevenge. Our first Reddit post is from Senelaria. My uncle took revenge on behalf of my parents. As the title gives away, this didn't happen to me, but is the story of how my uncle avenged my parents. My parents had me when they were plenty young. They were not teens anymore, but had barely left that age bracket. My mom and dad met in college. That was also when they had me. So while my parents were in their courses, I mostly stayed with my grandparents. The whole family lives in the same area, and the college was not that far away. My parents were still young and liked to go out with friends on occasion. When the following happened, I was a few years old. On occasion, they frequented a bar. A drunk guy there groped my mom and did not take a no as a no. My dad intervened and stopped the guy, and half an hour later all seemed forgotten. The music was loud, the bar crowded, and then someone in the crowd hit my dad with an empty glass pitcher square in the face. He was bleeding profusely and collapsed. But in the press semi-darkness and over the music, no one knew who did it. My dad got taken to the hospital. He had a broken nose and a heavy concussion. He also couldn't see who had attacked him, and his memory between the alcohol and being hit in the head was also very fuzzy. Of course, they had considered the guy who had harassed my mom, but they didn't know him, nor did they see him anywhere leading up to the moment, let alone have any evidence. So they pressed charges against unknown. But there was virtually nothing anyone could do. But then a few days later, the piece of crap that had harassed my mom approached her on campus. Turns out he was in the same college as my parents. He made a few veiled comments and left little doubt that it had been him that hit my dad in the face. And the piece of garbage let my mom know that my dad next time should mind his manners, and that the little touching he had done didn't hurt anyone and wasn't that bad. And if he wanted to do it again, he would, and maybe more. And then the piece of crap went on his merry way. My mom was horrified, of course. She went home and told my grandparents, my dad his parents. But no one could do anything. It was a he said, she said deal after all. And my mom hadn't even gotten the guy's name. My mom cried a lot at that time and didn't know what to do. She also was afraid of going to classes or out alone. I honestly only remember that time very scarcely. I was just a little kid, but I can remember my dad in the hospital and with his broken nose, and my mom crying a lot. My dad, of course, was just as angry and humiliated as my mom. No one knew what to do, and everyone was treading on eggshells around each other. But that is where my uncle enters the stage. My uncle, my mom's brother, lived on the other side of the country. He was a pie, and he was, of course, the last to hear the full story. But the moment he heard someone had threatened his little sister, he was on his way home. After hearing the full story, my uncle knew it would likely be hard to get the guy on the harassment, the assault, or the threats. Having no evidence, my uncle had my mom point the guy out from afar on campus. It took a few days to find him, but then my uncle started to stalk that piece of human filth. My uncle took sick days, all his vacation, and invested every second possible to find out everything about the harasser. My uncle even approached the pig in another bar and became drinking buddies with him. Over several weeks, my uncle had uncovered all manners of illicit behavior: possession, consumption, and distribution of drugs, theft, and a few other misdemeanors and smell-time stuff. And my uncle could have put him away for that. But my uncle always said, when asked about, that if he sent the asshole to prison, it would be for molesting my mom and hurting my dad. And that is what he did. One night, while out with his new buddy drinking, my uncle made the idiot piss drunk, and they landed in my uncle's motel room. He got the harasser to incriminate himself on video, rattling off a list of illegal shit he was up to. My uncle had, of course, pretended to be a crook too. Among the stories asshole told was the story of how he groped some chick and brained her dude with a pitcher of beer. Now, something needs to be said. In my country, of course, recording someone in secret is illegal, and under some conditions, but as a pie, my uncle knew that laws for that exactly. But paradoxically, the situation is different if it is not only audio but also video, and my uncle had the asshole on camera confessing. The next day, my uncle turned himself into the police with all his collected evidence, because secretly filming people was still a crime, though the video could be used as evidence in court, as my uncle was not affiliated with the police or any other governmental agency. When the criminal trial and the civil trial were over, the asshole got 6 years in prison and had to pay damages to my mom and dad. And my uncle got slapped with the equivalent of a $2,000 fine for secretly filming the asshole. Money well spent, he always said. This comment is from Smekayakan. Your uncle is a kick-ass person. This comment is from Hapless Asshole. I'm trying to think of a single member of my family who would give up all their vacation and sick leave, dedicate so much effort, and spend so much time drinking with a repulsive human being, although that might have been fun in a schadenfreude sort of way on my behalf, and deliberately cost himself a $2,000 fine on top of all that. I'm coming up with nada. Your uncle needs to be immortalized in a movie. Fucking the fuckwad will serve nicely as a working title, although it would need to be changed before any info could be released to the press. On second thought, though, that working title would certainly gin up interest. This comment is from Senalaria. My grandparents actually paid the fine on behalf of my uncle, seeing as he had burned through his vacation, and my dad's parents even insisted on paying him part of his usual pie fee. Now, a word from today's sponsor. Make sure to donate to my Patreon down in the description below to get early access to videos, participate in special patron-only events, and other goodies. Any amount of money is greatly appreciated. It makes it easier for me to make the content that I love making, and I know you guys love too. Now back to the video. Our next Reddit post is from Deleted. Manager tried to take delivery man's livelihood, makes him fear for his family's future. Don't worry, I've got your back. Repost of my story from malicious complaints. People thought people might like it over here. Back in the warehouse days, we had an ever-growing clearance section. Because of this, the company employed a delivery driver to be solely responsible for delivering clearance items purchased by customers. This delivery driver, let's call him John, was amazing. He was a veteran of the industry, had 2 trucks, a smaller and a larger one, did most of the heavy lifting, always took the time to chat to me as I helped him load up his delivery run, would bring me beer when it was an extremely hot day, and knew I'd been busting my ass. He had worked for a bunch of high-end furniture stores, but when the recession hit and companies went belly up or cut costs, he found himself struggling for work. The company I worked for had a problem with delivery drivers, due to the fact the company was cheap and won't pay the industry rates most delivery drivers charged. John was happy to make a few concessions for cash-in-hand deliveries, and naturally management took advantage of that. After a few problems in the warehouse, I asked John if I could get a few shifts working for him as his delivery officer. John immediately said yes, as he had problems of his own with lazy employees. I immediately fell in love with the work. We would do a forum start to get deliveries on the watch 6, and if we scheduled it correctly, we could be done by 22:30. I loved the physicality of it, loved being on the open road, and loved swapping stories with John. He would talk about his wife and kids, and it'd make fun of his tacky scorpion tattoo. The problems started when John would get his delivery run sheet from the store and would see the delivery prices quoted to the customer from the manager. To give you an idea, the store would charge $95 for a local delivery. This was with a full day of deliveries and approximately 20-30 deliveries. John would charge slightly more, as he was doing maybe 58 deliveries and they'd be all over. as opposed to all being in a specific area. John would go in and chat to the manager and ask why a customer was only being charged $50 for a 3-seater sofa bed going up 6 flights of stairs, when normally it would be a $110 delivery charge and $100 for every flight of stair past the first level. The manager would just shrug and say she reduced the delivery to close the sale. We'd get other deliveries where we'd have to carry a 10-piece sectional sofa up 7 flights of stairs because the customer walled reserve an elevator. Or, in some cases, the goods walled fit in the lift. We'd get the sofa inside, unbig it, connect the sections, take the rubbish away only for the customer to hand John $30 in cash. It was soul-crushing. I remember getting the customer to sign off on the paperwork, as John said he'd meet me back at the truck. I grabbed the last bits of rubbish and made my way downstairs and jumped into the passenger seat. John was trying not to look at me. Had been crying. I asked if he was okay, and he kind of broke down a little, and confused in me that he was struggling with bills, that the company I worked for was his only decent-paying job, that he was getting screwed over by the manager, that he might have to sell his trucks to pay his bills. My heart went out for this guy. He was becoming a fast friend and genuinely loved his job. I began to hatch a plan, based on my inside knowledge of the manager, the area manager, the general manager, and the company in general. I took John to a small bar and bought us a few drinks. We sat in a booth, and I began to lay out my plan for revenge. I asked John why he didn't give the manager a price list and charge more for his deliveries. John, if I do that, the manager said that they'd drop me as their driver and find someone cheaper. I laughed. Me call her now and quit. I explained that we had seen the run sheet for tomorrow. We had a massive run, 10 deliveries, and we already knew the manager had quoted ridiculously cheap prices, like $20 a delivery. John was sure. Me look, any other contract driver would charge $200 minimum per delivery. There's no way another driver will touch this company. John got on the phone, called the manager, put her on speaker, and quit right then and there. The manager, as expected, talked a big game. She said they'd be better off without John and that he just lost his biggest contract. John hung up, looking sick and panicked. I reassured him it'd be ok. I checked my watch. The store closed at 5, it was currently 1. I promised John by 4 he'd get a call back from the manager. In the meantime, we set about creating a new list of demands. That if they were to employ John, they'd do the following: charge a preset price given to them by John. Pay for John's off-cider and gas. For any difficult deliveries, balcony lifts, fire escape deliveries, they'd charge an additional fee. That if they wanted to terminate John, they'd have to give him the appropriate notice. Sure enough, at 4, John's phone rings. Would you look at that? It's the manager. It's the manager. John answers and puts the phone on speaker. The manager, in a much more polite tone, says that if John will do the delivery tomorrow, she'll offer him a $50 gift card for the store. I hang up the call. John looks at me in disbelief. I tell him when she calls back, "You lay out your demands." And that's that. 5 minutes later, his phone rings again. John answers and puts her on speaker phone. The manager starts her spiel, but John cuts her off. John begins listing the problems he's having with the company. At first he's nervous, but then the months of being screwed over kick in, and he lays down the law like a champion. The manager laughs off John's request, and I encourage John to relay the next bit of information to manager. John, you know as well as I do, no other contract driver would get out of bed for less than $250 a delivery. For what you are proposing, you either sign off on my demands or good luck tomorrow. Manager, fine, do the delivery tomorrow and then we can. John, no. I'm coming down there now. You'll sign off on everything. Then we will load the truck up tonight and finish the delivery tomorrow. He hangs up. We go to the store and Feminiger looks pissed. She keeps bitching that John has her between a rock and a hard place and that John is extorting her. I can't help but point out that I'm sure John's kids would like to eat tomorrow. John slaps the new contract, it's written up by hand in the truck, and says, "Sign it." The manager signs it, and John backs his truck into the warehouse. We notice, as per usual, its sofa beds, glass coffee tables, the heaviest items this company sells. The manager walks out to the warehouse and smirks as we struggle to load the extremely heavy goods into the truck. As we finish, the manager has a few snarky parting words. "Manager John, with this new contract, just so we are clear, me no matter what Manager, even if the customer isn't home, I expect you to make sure the goods are there. I don't want any goods coming back to the warehouse." John, you got it. It was a glorious delivery day the next day. 80 of customers' goods walled fit, as the manager didn't explain to the customers that they had to measure their door frames. We had customers screaming at us, abusing us, saying it was unfair they had to now pay more than 20, and how dare we charge them more. We just laughed and complied with the manager's directive. We left every piece of furniture at the property, some in the hallways, others in the middle of doorways, some we just left at the front door as some customers refused to accept the delivery as they didn't want to pay us any money at all. For the nice ones who had cash ready and were happy to pay us for our obvious efforts and make sure they had the best delivery experience possible. Update: what happened with John. After I quit my warehouse job and landed a few acting gigs, I finally landed an acting role on a prominent series. Once at the job, I managed to talk to one of the producers about John, and John got a job picking up the sets from the studio warehouse and transferring the sets to the studio. He would then work with the night crew to erect the sets and get them ready for the next day's shooting. I see him around the studio lot between setups, and also most nights when I wrap. He is making great money and is comfortably supporting his family and putting his kids through school. And there's still a good hard-earned beer at the end of the day. This comment is from Haverett. Feels like this story ends 23rds through. What happened afterwards, edit from the malicious compliance, which cost her a bunch of bonuses. This comment is from Southern Jub. I feel like slapping my monitor on the side to get the reception back. And then, WTF happened. This comment is from Finwell. Fuck that manager, I really hope she steps on a Lego or something. That was Reddit Reads r/ProRevenge. If you like this content, please subscribe and click the bell icon so you are notified of new uploads. We upload new videos every day. Also subscribe to our Patreon, as that will help us a lot. See you next time.